Hi and welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be more of a rant, but still a pretty organized rant because I do have a structured way I want to go about this. Ever since ENHYPEN debuted in 2020, they have been non-stop working with practices, rehearsals, promotions, and so on, which is very understandable because they're trying to find their grounding in the industry. They're also trying to build a fandom and get their name out there as much as they can. So it definitely makes sense of why they work so hard right out of the gate at debut. The K-pop industry is a very fast-paced system to where you have to make sure you're constantly putting yourself out there, constantly promoting yourself so that you don't fade into the background of the many hundred other groups that are also debuting and promoting all at the same time. They also debuted at the beginning of COVID, which also made some of these situations difficult. Every situation has its pros and cons, and I definitely think that COVID helped slow things down at the beginning for a little bit. A lot of the jobs that idols do have to do with traveling, and because during COVID, traveling was not allowed, a lot of those jobs and schedules ended up being canceled, which kind of gave these groups and idols a little bit of a break that was well needed in the industry. But at the same time, there were also a lot of cons that came with this. Of course, the idols not really having too much that they were able to do. They weren't allowed to see fans in person. They weren't allowed to have concerts with fans physically there. But also a lot of idols weren't able to see their families. COVID also caused a lot of groups and idols to fall behind in popularity and schedules as well. Whenever things were starting to finally open back up and K-pop idols were allowed to somewhat go back to their normal schedules, K-pop companies started to pack in idol schedules with as much as they could due to lost time and lost promotion to try their best to get their groups and idols' names back out there. Whenever it comes to groups being overworked, it's kind of this thing in K-pop that just gets thrown around in conversation, but like nobody actually stops and really talks about it because most people assume that it's just normal, it comes with the job. To a certain extent, yeah, there's truth in that, but K-pop companies can definitely change this. This isn't something that's just written in stone, has to happen. The K-pop industry is this way due to how companies decide and choose to promote and debut their group. And whenever I say K-pop companies really have control over how fast-paced the industry is, I really mean all the bigger companies. For the most part, smaller companies should just kind of follow what the bigger companies are doing because they are trying their best to keep up with them and compete with them. The big companies, for the most part, are the ones who decide what's trending, how quickly they want to put out and debut groups. Like, we've gotten so many different groups from the same companies for like the past 3 or 4 years. And these companies are still talking about debuting groups like this year and next year very, very soon. But back to ENHYPEN, I feel like everyone's kind of been doing the same thing as me, where we are all aware that ENHYPEN is being overworked, but we kind of been waiting and giving BLIF the benefit of the doubt to see if they were going to change things or continue to overwork them. And I think at this point we all know that they have decided to continue to overwork them. ENHYPEN has been on 2 big world tours since 2022. It is now 2024 and their company has announced another tour called Walk the Line. This is becoming a pattern now. I'm definitely understanding the type of schedules BLIF is trying to enforce on ENHYPEN. As I mentioned before, in the beginning of their career, I kind of understood what they were trying to do. Doesn't necessarily make it right to compile their schedules like that, but I understand that again, when you debut, you have to get grounded, you have to build a fan base. But ENHYPEN are now 4 years into their career. They have a very strong fan base, and not to mention that they are from HYBE Entertainment. So with that, they already had somewhat of a built-in fandom anyway. Not to mention they already had pre-debut fans from their island era. So I just feel like it's a good time for ENHYPEN to be able to take a break. Something that's enough for them to just be able to rest physically and mentally. I feel like ENHYPEN are at the point in their career where they should be allowed to slow down at least a little bit. Like any other job, especially a job that asks so much of you physically, you have to be allowed to rest. You have to get a break. This job specifically requires you to be mentally and physically in tip-top shape. You have to be getting enough rest, you have to be getting enough nutrients, and with how their schedules are set up, there's just no way they're being able to do any of that efficiently. The boys have shown that they are exhausted, and on top of that they're struggling with injuries. Even if they're not saying anything, you can definitely tell when somebody is physically and mentally tired. So I do want to talk about the things that they have to do within their schedules, just to kind of remind everyone of how busy their schedules actually are. And I'm not saying that ENHYPEN are the only K-pop group that has to deal with this. They're definitely not. They just happen to be the subject of this video. So with their scheduling, let's start with their comebacks. During a K-pop group's comeback, they will usually do a ton of promotions through performances and interviews. These promotions also extend to the West now, whether it's pre-recorded performances or actually traveling abroad to be interviewed and perform on certain talk shows. They also have their own variety show called ENHYPEN, and if you'll notice, they haven't posted an episode in like 2 months, which lets me know how busy they are, because they're pretty consistent whenever it comes to the posting of these episodes. Even though, yeah, the ENHYPEN episodes allows them to just kind of have fun and do activities, it's still them being in front of a camera, and I still deem that as work, because it's time where they could literally either be sleeping, laying down, or something. Whenever they film these shows, if there's an opportunity for them to get some rest, they'll definitely take it. On top of all of that, they are also constantly preparing for their next comeback. They're always rehearsing, learning a new dance, practicing that new dance, learning and recording a new song, filming new music video and promotional content. All of that is constantly happening. They're constantly on the move. They're constantly working on their next project, even as they're promoting their other project. And then once again, take all of that and imagine being on tour at the same time. A lot of times, staff also take this opportunity of traveling on tour to find different destinations and spots to film for music videos. So even as they're traveling on their world tour, they're also traveling to other destinations for other projects, whether that be their next music video, fashion show weeks. And another thing that a lot of people tend to forget is how much idols are constantly in front of the camera. I'm talking about Weverse Lives, I'm talking about fan calls, vlogs, variety shows, all of it. Which to me, if you are still around staff and you are still in front of a camera, that is still you working. You're still having to be on your best behavior. You're not fully able to relax. You're not able to just say and do whatever you want. As an idol, even though it varies from idol to idol, you do not necessarily have that freedom. And there are a lot of idols who actually enjoy going live and feel that they are resting, because to be fair, sometimes it isn't always staff telling them to go live. Sometimes it's the idol themselves wanting to go live. I understand that all of this is a part of their job and you kind of always have to have this persona on, and there's also some idols who could care less what they look like, how they appear to other people, and do whatever they want, but not a lot of idols have that freedom. And I kind of mentioned this, but a lot of idols also have side gigs, whether that's for a few of the members or the entire group, doing photo shoots, commercials, and ads separately from their own group projects, so that is another thing. And yes, again, I do understand this is a part of their job, but I'm saying that they should be able to also rest sometimes and take a break, because again, like any other job, we need breaks, rest, sleep, all of that to actually function properly and do our best at our job. So ENHYPEN has had a lot of moments where they've shown exhaustion, injuries, and we're going to kind of talk about those. I don't know about all injuries or signs of exhaustion, so if I miss any and you want to inform people of other incidents, please comment it down below. The first time I saw that ENHYPEN were showing signs of exhaustion was whenever Jake was wincing in pain during their performance. I don't really know what the source of the pain was. Some people were saying that it was because he was sick. Other people are saying that it was body soreness, like in the shoulders and back, which I'm kind of leaning more towards on the side of body soreness, because it does look like he's wincing in pain from movement, and body soreness can come from overworking yourself as well. But there's also people who are saying none of that is true and it's because he got sweat in his eyes, so I'm not sure, but it does look like he is wincing in pain. Nicki also had a moment whenever he was showing exhaustion at the end of their Criminal Love performance. There's a video that went around for a bit where at the end of the song, you can literally see him bend down in exhaustion, which this can happen to anyone who's tired after a performance that intense. But because we are aware that ENHYPEN are being overworked, I think everyone assumed that the exhaustion came from the fact that he was pushing through the performance even though he was so tired. It was still very baffling also because it was the beginning of their world tour. No one should be that exhausted at the beginning of their tour. I get maybe towards the end of it, but this just shows that they have been doing so much up until this tour had been announced. Most celebrities, performers, especially in the West, constantly talk about how much they hate touring. Michael Jackson himself said he hates touring, and that's because it is so exhausting and it asks so much of you mentally and physically every single day. Another injury that has also popped up is Jay's knee injury. The company recently came out about it and actually did put him on a break to where he wasn't doing activities with ENHYPEN for a little bit, which emphasis on for a little bit because I feel like that break was like 2 weeks and then he was right back to their regular schedule. But fans are very observant, and a lot of people pointed out that he had been wearing a knee brace in performances last year, which means that this has been an ongoing thing for a while and they are just now addressing it and giving him a break, which is so crazy because it really puts a perspective again on how companies treat idols. They could care less about an injury until it gets to the point where somebody cannot perform anymore, and then all of a sudden they want to take action. So I've mentioned on here that the biggest part of ENHYPEN being overworked is the back-to-back touring, and I'll say it again, touring is not fun. Even the biggest performers who love to perform hate touring because touring is so exhausting. And I just don't understand B-Lift's obsession with putting ENHYPEN on multiple tours. Tours take so much out of you. So imagine doing a full world tour and then having to go right back and do another one the next year, on top of all the other schedules that you've also been having to do without resting. I've heard people who have worked on world tours say they understand why a lot of performers who have to travel 24/7 get hooked on drugs because you need something to keep you going. And I'm not saying that drugs are okay, I'm just saying that whenever you are obligated to do something and you quite literally do not have the energy to do it anymore, you start relying on other things to keep you going. People have also discussed how a lot of K-pop idols do IV trips to keep them going as well. Because minus a world tour, K-pop idol schedules are already packed with so much to do. So think about how ENHYPEN has their insane choreography that they have to do for majority of their performances, but also even if they're not dancing, they still have to have energy up to help hype up the crowd, to help keep the crowd engaged, to help look like they are still having fun even if they are exhausted. And then on top of that, they have to do it for a whole year because tours last for so long, especially whenever you do world tours. So you have to pick up, go to the next place, and do the exact same thing. And then on top of that, most K-pop idols are still behind the scenes preparing for their next comeback, doing other schedules, flying to other places in between tour stops for other events. And just to give you like a perspective on how crazy ENHYPEN's tours have actually been, their first big world tour was their Manifesto tour, with its first date taking place on September 17th, 2022, and their last date being February 5th, 2023. During this time, they had a comeback for their song Blessed Curse. They had an entire album released, which they did promote for music shows and so on. Their second world tour, the Fate Tour, was announced in February of the same year. Also keep in mind that around this time that their tour is ending is also around the time that they are back performing at award shows. So while they're doing that, they're also rehearsing, practicing, and getting ready for their next comeback, which was Bite Me, and that was released May 22nd, 2023. And they of course had promotions for that. And then they were back on tour with their first show being July 29th, 2023. During this time as well, towards like the middle end of the tour, everyone starts to notice that their hair color had changed, which usually indicates that there's a comeback coming up. They did release the single Criminal Love during that time, which they came back to promote in Korea before continuing their tour in the US. Sweet Venom was released November 17th, 2023, which was during the time that they were still on tour. And after they eventually wrapped up the tour, B-Lift thought it was a good idea to add on some more dates for an encore tour, which they called the Fate Plus Tour. That lasted until 2024 before, which they ended up having another comeback this year, July 16th, for EXO. And you want to know what's crazy? BLIF just announced another world tour called Walk the Line. And when I tell you my jaw dropped whenever I saw this announcement, all I could think about is this has to be a joke. They cannot be for real. And it just really makes me so sad for the members and K-pop idols in general, because you work so hard to put on these great performances, because idols realize that fans, they save up money and pay so much to go see them in concert, and the ENHYPEN members are very professional about it, as are a lot of other K-pop groups and idols. They want to make sure they always give their best and give on a great performance that you can remember and be happy that you went to go see their concert. And so I hate that with how hard they work, the company doesn't consider how they feel. The company doesn't consider their health. They don't give them enough rest to be able to continue to work extremely hard. Instead, they expect them to work hard regardless of how packed their schedules are, regardless of them not getting sleep, regardless of so many different things. And I have an understanding, as do many other K-pop fans, that these companies do not care about these idols. They could care less about their health. They could care less about anything that actually affects the idols, as long as they're able to keep on performing, as long as they're able to keep on bringing in money. The only time they actually stop and acknowledge anything is if it affects how much they get to profit from it. If it affects the money, then all of a sudden they're aware of everything and they're making changes and they're adjusting things for the artist. But if not, then they could care less. They'll keep pushing. They won't even acknowledge it half the time. It's such a sad situation for not only ENHYPEN, but all groups in general. This industry is a mess. And if only the companies actually cared about their artists, it would be such an amazing industry to be in. It's just so much of a messy situation, which is what happens whenever money's involved. I have been seeing a lot of ENHYPEN fans talking about this. I see a lot of other fans of their own groups talking about how much their groups and idols are being overworked. I feel like it's just been an ongoing conversation that we've been having since the beginning of time. I remember whenever people used to talk about how much TWICE were being overworked, BTS were being overworked. It's just something that I realize will take years to actually change and might never change, because money, once again, is involved. But I think the more that we are aware of it, the more likely things could change, the more we talk about these things, discuss these things, and actually put action to our words. Because even though we as fans do not have a say in everything an idol is able to do, necessarily change the way a company runs different things, we do still have a huge part in how companies react and look at situations, because we are the people that they are trying to sell to. Without fans, there are no artists. Without fans, there is no revenue. All these brands they connect to that they get money off of, who do you think these brands are catering to? Fans. They are depending on fans. And if you look at the Luna situation, that's probably the biggest situation to where the fans actually boycotted and there were real results. Maybe not the results that everybody wanted. I feel like the girls got out of a bad situation and hopefully are a lot more happier in what they're doing now than what they used to do, even though, again, it's not the same as it used to be, which is very sad. But at the end of the day, I'd pass up good music. I'd pass up getting to see certain people in concert and all those different things if it meant that the artists were going to be able to be healthy and happy. And it's a sad reality again, because at the end of the day, yeah, we love all these different things, and a lot of times these artists and the music and everything are keeping a lot of people afloat. They're keeping a lot of people happy, and so a lot of people don't want to see them go. But again, I rather view it as helping an artist or idol or whoever out of a bad situation, because a lot of times idols or artists stay in situations for the fans, and I feel like as fans we need to be helping and allowing artists and idols to know that you do not have to continue on just for our sake. Continue on because you want to continue on. Continue on because you're happy with what you're doing and you find joy within it. It is totally fine to step down or to want to do something different because it's no longer supporting you in a healthy way or making you happy anymore. I don't know for sure what what ENHYPEN are thinking. They seem to like their job and enjoy it, but at the same time, they obviously are annoyed with some of the things that have been happening with sasaengs, and probably not being able to rest could be something that they think about, even if they're not being honest with fans, because they don't want fans to worry about them. I am okay with not getting a song or comeback or album or whatever from ENHYPEN for an entire year if that means that they get to rest, because I really feel like at this point they have a good stable fan base to where they could take a break and come back and still do great, if not better. But again, that is why I still am going to say that even though yes, the company are the ones who enforce the rules, they're the ones who have the power over all the decisions that are made, I still will never underestimate the power that fans have over companies. If you restrict the flow of money to companies, they'll start paying attention, and all of a sudden they start caring about what's morally correct. Which is why I think it is a great thing that people talk about having boycotts. And I've even heard people talk about boycotting this tour. And I know fans get worried for the boys because they think that this will affect them if people boycott their activities. But at the end of the day, I think fans are trying their best to do what they think is best for the boys. And if that means not going to the shows on this tour and not selling out their shows, then that's what it has to do to get the company to finally stop and listen to everybody. But that's all for this video. If you have a different view on it or another perspective, I would love to hear all of that. This video has been a long time coming. I've been planning to make this video about ENHYPEN being overworked since last year, and the fact that it's only gotten worse since last year, it's just extremely disappointing. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope everyone has an amazing day. Bye bye!